They started with whispers, crude jokes about her body. One of them said it loud enough for her to hear. "Bet that wrench turner's hiding a whole toolbox back there." She told them to stop, told them no, but they didn't like that answer. So they circled, laughed, and when she tried to walk away, they grabbed her, tried to force her pants down right there in front of everyone. Want to know what happened when 4 grown soldiers saw what was on her back? What made them freeze in absolute terror? Then drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. And hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear isn't just about humiliation. It's about the price some people pay so the rest of us can sleep safely at night. The desert sun had no mercy that afternoon. Alpha Range baked under Arizona heat that turned metal tools into branding irons and made every breath feel like swallowing fire. 109 degrees Fahrenheit. The kind of heat that makes experienced soldiers question their life choices. The air shimmered in waves that distorted distance and made the mountains look like they were breathing. The smell was pure military installation. Hot brass from the firing ranges, diesel exhaust from generators running 24/7, and that particular cocktail of sweat and machinery oil that clung to everything and everyone. Generators hummed their constant white noise, punctuated by the crack of rifle fire from ranges half a mile distant, the rhythmic thump of artillery exercises creating a bass line underneath it all. In the middle of that controlled chaos, a woman worked without fanfare. Thea Brennan didn't announce herself, never had, never would. She moved with the kind of quiet precision that came from years of understanding that loud people got noticed and noticed people got dead. 34 years old, 5'8".
Athletic build that spoke of functional strength rather than gym vanity. Her gray contractor t-shirt was dark with perspiration, brown cargo trousers worn and functional, steel-toed boots that had seen better days but still did their job. She knelt beside the scaffolding framework, working on the target reset mechanism with economical movements. No wasted motion, no unnecessary flourishes. Her hands traced each connection, like she was reading a language written in metal and tension. Testing, feeling, understanding through touch what diagnostic equipment might miss. Most of the soldiers moving through the maintenance area barely noticed her. Just another contractor, another civilian fixing another piece of equipment that would probably break again next month. Background noise in the endless maintenance cycle that kept a military base functional. Nothing special, nothing worth paying attention to. Under the shade canopy 50 feet away, 4 infantry soldiers had made her their entertainment. Corporal Derek Hastings sat with his back against an equipment locker. Late 20s, regulation haircut, uniform that was parade ground perfect despite the heat. He had the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't twisted with barely contained anger. His jaw worked constantly, chewing on thoughts that tasted bitter. On his left wrist, partially hidden by his sleeve, a leather bracelet, hand-braided, well-worn. The name Nathan burned into the leather in careful letters. He touched it constantly. A nervous habit, a reminder, a wound that wouldn't close. 3 other soldiers sat with him. Private Greer Mullins, 22 years old and fresh enough that his uniform still had creases. Private First Class Webb, built like a linebacker with all the intelligence of one. And Specialist Kowalski, who'd been in long enough to know better but not long enough to care. "Tell me that woman doesn't know how to work," Webb said, nudging Kowalski. "Look at that form when she bends over." The others laughed, that ugly kind of laughter that said more about the laughers than the target. "What do you think?" Mullins asked, pulling out his phone. "Ex-military or just fitness instructor who got lost? Maybe she's built for the job." Kowalski grinned. "You know what they say, engineered for torque." More laughter, louder this time, testing boundaries, seeing how far they could push before someone told them to stop. Thea didn't react, didn't even glance in their direction. She adjusted her position, tested the concrete's consistency with practiced fingers, moved 2 paces left to start the next section. Her right knee had a brace on it, worn and functional rather than decorative. Medical grade, the kind issued by VA hospitals to veterans with service-connected injuries. When she settled into her new stance, the brace caught sunlight briefly, reflected it back like a signal. But the soldiers under the canopy didn't notice details like that. They were too busy entertaining themselves. The man watching most intently wasn't participating in the jokes. Derek Hastings sat with arms folded across his chest, his jaw working like he was chewing on broken glass. He'd been having a rough 3 months. Failed his NCO course in June. passed over for promotion in July. Watched younger soldiers with less time in service get stripes he'd been working toward for 2 years. His girlfriend had left him last month. Told him he wasn't man enough for her, that she dated a Green Beret before him, and Derek didn't measure up. Didn't have that edge, that confidence, that proof he'd done something that mattered. Every word had landed like a knife between his ribs. Because she was right. He hadn't done anything that mattered. He was just another soldier going through the motions, wearing a uniform but never testing it, never proving it meant something. So he was looking for someone to take it out on, someone to prove he had power over, someone who couldn't fight back. "You know what?" Hastings said, standing up. "I think we should check what she's doing, make sure she's following safety protocols." Webb glanced at him uncertainly. "She looks like she knows what she's doing, Corp." "Appearances can be deceiving," Hastings replied. His voice had that artificial authority junior NCOs used when they wanted to sound more important than they were. "And we've got a responsibility to ensure all non-military personnel are operating within established guidelines." It was bureaucratic nonsense, the kind of regulation speak that could justify anything if you said it with enough confidence. The others followed him, drawn by that magnetic pull of potential confrontation that young soldiers found irresistible. They spread out slightly as they approached, not quite surrounding her, but definitely establishing a presence that couldn't be ignored. Thea sensed the shift before she heard their footsteps. Something in the quality of silence behind her changed, became focused, predatory. The hair on the back of her neck stood up, an early warning system built into human DNA, the same system that had kept her alive in places where the wrong instinct meant a body bag. She glanced over her shoulder once, just long enough to catalog 4 men approaching with swagger that preceded trouble, young, confident in their numbers, the kind of confidence that came from never being truly tested. She went back to her work, but her shoulders tightened, almost imperceptible. Her stance shifted, weight distributed differently, ready to move in any direction. When she traced a line in the dust with her boot, it curved, like a hook, like the arc of movement in close quarters combat. Small adjustments. Most people would miss them completely. But someone with training would recognize the signs. A fighter preparing for contact. An operator checking exits and calculating angles. Because Thea Brennan wasn't just someone who fixed infrastructure. And the moment these soldiers decided to test her, they were going to learn exactly what that meant. The confrontation started with bureaucracy, the way most military conflicts do. Thea was adjusting a cable sleeve when Hastings' shadow fell across her work. She'd flagged a kink in the line twice already, the kind that would jam rounds and cause malfunctions during live fire exercises, the kind that got soldiers killed when they needed their equipment to work. "I need to see your clearance documentation," Hastings said, his tone carrying that artificial authority that junior NCOs practiced in mirrors. Thea straightened slowly, turned to face him without urgency. Her expression was neutral, professional. The face of someone who dealt with petty authority figures in worse places than Arizona. "My clearance is current," she said. Her voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't waste energy on volume. 2 levels above what this work requires. "New security protocols," Hastings replied. He was making this up as he went. "Require verification of all non-uniform personnel working in sensitive areas." She pulled a folder from her tool bag, handed it over without comment. "Official papers, properly stamped. Clearance codes that should have ended this immediately. Department of Defense contractor credentials. Background check documentation. Security clearances that went deeper than most active duty personnel ever achieved." Hastings examined them like he knew what he was looking at, squinting at the fine print, looking for something, anything, a reason to push further. "Says infrastructure assessment," he said. "Doesn't specifically include electrical systems." "Infrastructure includes all support systems," Thea replied. Her voice hadn't changed. Still professional, still controlled. "Has since the update 3 months ago, Directive 774-12. Private Mullins snickered. "She knows the regs better than you, Corp." Hastings' jaw tightened. His hand went to that leather bracelet on his wrist, touched it, a nervous tell, a reminder of something that drove him. "Regulations updated again," he said. "New electromagnetic security protocols. Can't have unauthorized electronics near sensitive equipment. Need you to verify you're not carrying contraband devices." Master Sergeant Luther Kane looked up from his workstation 30 feet away. 58 years old, 3 decades in military maintenance, A man who'd seen enough bullshit to recognize it instantly. Hastings, Kane called out. What the hell are you doing? Routine security check, Master Sergeant. Hastings replied. Just following protocols. What protocols? Thea asked, her voice still calm. But there was an edge to it now. The sound of patience wearing thin. Phones, recording equipment, transmitters, Hastings said, could be concealed in clothing. Full compliance check required for uncleared personnel. That was a lie, and everyone within earshot knew it. But Hastings was banking on her not wanting to cause a scene, not wanting to escalate, assuming she'd back down rather than fight. He'd made a fundamental miscalculation, because Thea Brennan had fought in places where backing down meant death, and this wasn't even close to the worst situation she'd faced. Conversations nearby dropped to murmurs. Soldiers had started noticing. The kind of attention that spreads like wildfire on a military base. Something was happening, something worth watching. Strip search, Thea asked. Her voice was flat, stating facts. Upper body inspection for electronics concealment. Standard procedure, Hastings said. For uncleared personnel in sensitive areas. Mullins had his phone out now. Recording a stupid kid who thought he was documenting something funny. Something he could post on social media for likes and shares. He didn't understand what he was actually capturing. Put that away, Webb hissed. But Mullins just grinned. This might be worth posting. Thea stood there for a long moment, looking at this boy who thought he could humiliate her. This child wearing a uniform he hadn't earned, playing soldier in the safety of a training facility. Never tested, never proven, never forced to make the kind of choices that left scars. She could have called for Kane, could have demanded his supervisor, could have filed a formal complaint that would have ended Hastings' career before it really started, could have walked away and let it go. Instead, she set her folder down, reached for her belt, started unbuttoning her cargo trousers. Jesus, Mullins whispered, his phone steady, recording everything. She's actually doing it. She pulled them down to her knees, stood there, posture straight, expression unchanged, looking at Hastings with eyes that had seen men die and empires fall, eyes that had calculated firing solutions while under mortar fire, eyes that held no fear, no shame, no weakness, just cold assessment. Satisfied, she asked. Hastings' grin widened. He'd won. He'd asserted dominance, proved his power, made her submit. This was what he needed. This was how you showed you mattered. Turn around, he said, full inspection. As Thea turned, the afternoon sun caught something on her lower back that made the atmosphere shift. 5 marks ran parallel across her spine just above her waistband. Each mark different, precise, angular. Not tattoos, not decorative ink. Something carved into skin with purpose. Gas mask crossed with biohazard. Coordinates that meant something to people who knew geography. A syringe wrapped in lightning. Predator drone silhouette in a skull-wearing night vision equipment that cost more than most soldiers made in a year. Most people watching didn't understand what they were looking at. Mullins was still recording. Check out the back art, he said, his voice carrying that dismissive tone of someone who thought he understood. Probably got those near basic training, trying to look hardcore. But Webb had stopped smiling. Something in his gut told him this wasn't right, wasn't normal, wasn't something to joke about. And Master Sergeant Kane felt ice settle in his stomach because he'd seen markings like that before. Once, on a Navy SEAL who'd worked in Iraq doing things that had no official designation, things that got buried in classified folders with restrictions that lasted 50 years. That SEAL had told him something over beers one night, told him that certain operators marked themselves. Not for glory, not for recognition, but as proof to each other. That they'd survived what they survived, that they'd done what they'd done, that the scars were receipts written in skin for operations that never happened. That's when Sergeant Major Vincent Crawford walked around the corner. 52 years old, 6'2", 220 pounds of muscle earned through 3 decades of military service. His uniform was immaculate. His bearing was that of a man who'd commanded soldiers in combat and buried friends who didn't come home. He was carrying a clipboard, reviewing maintenance schedules. 2 junior officers walked beside him, discussing equipment rotation protocols. The clipboard hit the concrete with a sharp crack that echoed across the work area like a gunshot. The officers looked at him in confusion, followed his gaze to the woman standing half-dressed in the middle of their maintenance bay, surrounded by 4 soldiers, one holding a phone up, recording. Crawford's face had gone completely white, like he'd seen a ghost. Like the past had reached out and grabbed him by the throat. "Sweet Mother of God," he whispered, because those marks weren't random. They weren't decorative. They were mission tallies from Ghost Vector operations. The kind of classified black operations that got buried so deep that even people with top secret clearance weren't supposed to know they'd happen. The kind of missions where success meant nobody ever heard about it, and failure meant the operators simply disappeared. No memorial service, no flag-draped coffin, no record they'd ever existed. Crawford had been a master sergeant in Afghanistan, working intelligence coordination at Bagram Airfield in 2012. He'd seen the after-action reports before they were shredded, knew about operations that went sideways in ways that should have meant total loss, knew about operators who were supposed to be dead but somehow made it home with intelligence that prevented disasters. He also knew those operators had been given new identities, strict orders to disappear forever, for their own safety, for operational security, for reasons that went all the way to the Pentagon and stopped at doors where even generals needed permission to enter. Ghost Vector had been officially disbanded in 2013. All operators listed as killed in action or missing presumed dead. The program erased from official records. The missions buried under classification levels that wouldn't be declassified for 75 years. But Skin remembered what paperwork forgot. Thea Brennan wasn't just some contractor. She was a ghost made flesh. The kind of ghost that defense departments created when heroes needed to vanish for the good of national security. Hastings was still grinning, still playing to his audience, still completely unaware he'd just made the worst mistake of his military career. "See anything you want to report, ma'am?" he asked. Mullins was zooming in with his phone. "This is definitely going on social media." Thea began to turn back around, her movements unhurried, professional, like she was completing a task assigned by someone with actual authority. No shame in her posture, no embarrassment in her eyes, just the calm competence of someone who'd been through worse things than public humiliation and survived them all. That's when Crawford found his voice. "Stand down, Corporal." The words cut through the work area noise like a knife through silk. Every conversation stopped. Every tool went quiet. Even the distant rifle fire seemed to pause in respect for the authority in that command. Hastings spun around, his face cycling through several shades of pale as he realized who was watching, as he recognized the rank, as he understood that this situation had just escalated beyond anything he could control. "Sir," he started, "just conducting a routine security inspection under new. I said stand down." Crawford's voice carried the kind of authority that came from making life and death decisions in places where the wrong choice meant body bags and folded flags. He walked across the concrete with deliberate steps, his boots hitting the ground with measured rhythm, his eyes never leaving Thea's face. The two junior officers hung back. They didn't understand what was happening, but they recognized the look on their sergeant major's face. "Ma'am," Crawford said quietly, "you can get dressed." She nodded once, began pulling her trousers back up, zipping them with the same unhurried precision she'd used to remove them. Mullins was still holding his phone up. "Sir," he said, "should I send this footage to Yan? You will delete that footage immediately," Crawford interrupted. "I will have you court-martialed for recording classified personnel without authorization." "Classified?" Mullins' voice cracked. "But she's just a contractor." "Delete it, now." The kid's hands shook as he fumbled with his phone. The video disappeared with a few taps. He shoved the device back in his pocket like it was radioactive. When Thea was fully dressed again, Crawford stepped closer. Close enough that his next words were meant for her alone. "Ghost Vector was officially disbanded in 2013, he said softly. "Officially," Thea replied. "There are no service records for your operations." "That was the point." Crawford studied her face, seeing things there that most people would miss. The way her eyes tracked movement without appearing to watch. The slight scarring on her knuckles that came from close quarters combat training. The way she stood with her weight balanced, always ready to move. "You're not supposed to exist," he said. "Neither is half the equipment on this base," she replied. "But here we are." Crawford turned to face the assembled soldiers. Hastings looked like he wanted to disappear into the concrete. Mullins was pale as desert sand. "Everyone out," Crawford said. "Now." "Sir, we've got scheduled maintenance on the web started. I don't care if you've got the Secretary of Defense scheduled for an oil change. Clear this area. Anyone who discusses what just happened will be washing dishes in the mess hall until their enlistment expires." The soldiers scattered. Hastings tried to linger, tried to explain. "Corporal Hastings." Crawford's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more terrifying. Report to my office at 1500 hours. Bring your supervisor and your section leader. Hastings' face went white. When the area was empty except for the three of them and the two junior officers, Crawford pulled out his phone, made a call to a number that wasn't in any directory. This is Crawford at Alpha Range, he said. I need immediate verification on a Thea Brennan, contractor credentials, background check, priority Alpha. He listened, his expression growing more serious. I see. And the classification level on her previous assignments, understood. What about current operational status? And copy that. And if someone had hypothetically compromised her cover identification, I understand completely. Thank you. He ended the call, looked at Thea. They tell me you've got clearance levels I'm not authorized to ask about, Crawford said. Then don't ask, Thea replied, but I can provide whatever support you need to complete your work. She looked up from her equipment, met his eyes. I just need to finish this repair and file my report, she said, same as any other day. After what just happened, you want to keep working. Thea was quiet for a moment. Then she gestured to the cable housing, to the scaffolding, to the target reset mechanism. This job needs to get done right, she said, because if it's done wrong, soldiers die. And I've seen enough soldiers die. Crawford realized he was looking at someone who understood that the work mattered more than the ego, that getting things right mattered more than being right. She went back to work. For the next 3 hours, she worked with quiet competence. She didn't just repair equipment, she understood it, could identify stress points that wouldn't show up on tests for another 1,000 hours of operation, found design flaws that had been overlooked by teams of engineers. Master Sergeant Kane stopped by to watch her work on the hydraulic reset mechanism. Bearing race is wearing unevenly, she said without looking up. Probably been that way for weeks. Kane checked his maintenance logs. Operators had been reporting inconsistent target cycling. Nothing serious enough to shut down training, but enough to make experienced shooters uncomfortable. How'd you spot that without running the system, he asked. Metal fatigue has a signature, Thea replied. You can feel it as the housing vibration. She moved to the electrical junction box. Your power relay is running hot too, she said. Probably has been for months. Kane pulled up electrical maintenance records. The relay had been flagged for replacement, still weeks away, but the temperature readings showed it was degrading faster than predicted. How'd you know? Thermal expansion. The housing metal contracts differently when the component is stressed. She guided his hand to the relay casing. Feel the difference in vibration frequency. It's working harder than the specifications call for. Kane had been maintaining military equipment for 30 years, but he was learning things he'd never considered. This wasn't textbook knowledge. This was field experience earned in places where equipment failure meant body bags. Crawford watched as she identified a hairline crack in a support bracket, found a safety wire that was corroding, caught a mounting bolt that was loosening. Each discovery was logged methodically. Professionally, when she finished, her report was thorough, contained 6 recommendations that would prevent equipment failures nobody else had even considered possible. Kane signed off as witness. Ma'am, he said quietly, outstanding work. Crawford read her report twice. Where did you really serve? Places that don't exist on official maps, she replied. Doing what kind of work? The kind that doesn't exist in field manuals. But Thea wasn't finished. She'd overheard part of Crawford's conversation, knew he was concerned about operational security. Sergeant Major, she said, respectfully, I'll handle this myself. Crawford looked at her. Ma'am, you don't have to. I've been handling worse than this for 13 years. Watch. She walked to where Hastings and the others had scattered, called them back. When they were assembled, Thea stood in front of them. Corporal Hastings wanted to verify my credentials, she said. Let me show you what qualified personnel look like. She walked to the main diagnostic station, performed a complete equipment diagnostic that normally took 2 hours. She did it in 4 minutes, found problems they'd been chasing for weeks, identified solutions they hadn't considered. Then she pointed to the hydraulic housing. See this fitting? She asked. They nodded. Someone loosened it within the last 72 hours. Your unit had access during that time frame. The color drained from their faces. If this system had been activated during live fire, hydraulic failure would have caused catastrophic mechanical breakdown. The target assembly would have collapsed. Anyone in the impact zone would have been crushed or killed by flying debris. 6 to 12 personnel casualties. Minimum. She let that sink in. Either someone in your unit is criminally incompetent, she said, or someone deliberately sabotaged equipment that soldiers depend on. Hastings stammered. Ma'am, we didn't. I don't care about apologies. I care about the soldiers who would have died. I care about the families who would have gotten folded flags and empty promises. I care about doing this job right because people I'll never meet are counting on me to get it right. She picked up her tool bag. Fix your standards, Corporal, before your incompetence gets someone killed. She walked out into the desert heat. Behind her, 4 soldiers stood in absolute silence, understanding for the first time what it meant to be truly humiliated, not by being stripped, but by being shown exactly how far they fell short of the standard. Kane watched her go, then turned to Hastings. You just got a lesson you couldn't buy with 10 years of service. I suggest you remember it. When Thea reached the work area exit, Crawford caught up to her. You don't have to come back here, he said. Thea looked back at the area where she'd been humiliated. I'll be back next week for the follow-up inspection, she said. Why? She was quiet for a moment. Because those kids need to understand that the quiet ones have stories too, and sometimes those stories matter more than the loud ones. She walked out, the sun catching those marks on her lower back one more time. 5 scars, 5 missions, 5 times she'd done impossible things and survived. At 1500 hours, Corporal Derek Hastings stood outside Crawford's office. His hands were trembling. The meeting lasted 25 minutes. When Hastings emerged, his face was pale. Extra duty for 8 weeks. Mandatory training on treatment of personnel with classified backgrounds. A letter of reprimand in his permanent file. By evening, every crew chief and maintenance supervisor had heard some version of what happened. The story varied in details, but the core remained consistent. A contractor had been humiliated by junior personnel. That contractor turned out to be someone whose service record was classified at levels most people couldn't imagine. Someone who'd done things that let everyone else sleep safely at night. That night, Thea Brennan sat in her small Phoenix apartment. Her knee throbbed, chronic pain from an injury sustained in a place she couldn't name. She opened her tool bag, pulled out something wrapped in cloth, military dog tags, well worn. The name stamped into the metal read, Hastings Nathan R. She held them for a long moment, remembering a young lieutenant in Yemen, remembering the weight of his body as she carried him through hostile territory, remembering his last words. Tell Derek I died protecting someone worth protecting. She'd been carrying those tags for 11 years, waiting for the right moment to return them to the brother Nathan had talked about constantly. Now she knew Derek Hastings, had looked him in the eye, had seen his anger and his pain. She wrapped the tags back up, placed them carefully in her bag. Eventually, when the time was right, when Derek was ready to hear it, she'd tell him the truth about his brother, because that's what ghosts did. They carried the stories of the fallen, they honored the dead through the work of the living, and they waited, patient, silent, invisible, until the moment came to speak. 3 days after the incident at Alpha Range, the story started spreading beyond the base perimeter. Military forums lit up with speculation, anonymous posts from soldiers who'd heard second-hand accounts, each telling adding details that might or might not be true. Private Greer Mullins sat in his barracks room, scrolling through his phone. He'd deleted the video like Crawford ordered, but the memory remained. Those 5 marks burned into his mind. He'd sketched them from memory, posted the sketches to a private military discussion board with a simple question. Anyone know what these symbols mean? The responses came quickly. Most were jokes, the usual internet nonsense. But one response was different. A user called GEREY OPS47, account created in 2009, thousands of posts on classified military operations. The response was brief. Those aren't tattoos, they're proof of survival from operations that were supposed to have 0% survival rate. Delete your post, delete your sketches. Forget you ever saw them. If the people who marked her find out you're spreading this around, you'll disappear and nobody will ask questions. Mullins felt ice settle in his stomach. He deleted the post immediately, but screenshots had been taken. The images were circulating, and somewhere in a secure facility in Virginia, automated systems flagged the activity, sent alerts to people whose job titles didn't appear on organizational charts. 40 miles from Alpha Range, Thea Brennan lived her quiet civilian life. The apartment was modest. 1 bedroom, basic furniture, nothing that drew attention. The kind of anonymity that came from being deliberately unremarkable. She worked 4 different contract positions, always moving, always working, never staying in one place long enough for patterns to form. But hidden in the back of her closet sat a locked footlocker. Inside were the pieces of a life that officially ended 11 years ago. Combat gear, tactical equipment, photographs of people who were supposed to be dead, dog tags, personal effects, mementos from soldiers who'd asked her to carry their stories home. She opened that footlocker every night. A ritual, a reminder, a promise. Tonight she pulled out a photograph. 8 people in desert camouflage, somewhere in Yemen. March 2013. Young faces trying to look tough for the camera. Third from the left stood Lieutenant Nathan Hastings, 26 years old. Marine Force Recon, sandy brown hair, easy smile. Next to him stood Lieutenant Marcus Reeves, 29. Broader build, serious expression. In his breast pocket, barely visible, the corner of a photograph. His newborn daughter, Sophie, and on the right side, Thea herself, 11 years younger, harder, leaner, eyes that held a different kind of intensity. She traced Nathan's face with one finger, remembering his voice, his terrible jokes, the way he'd talked about his younger brother Derek constantly, worried about him, wanted to protect him from the truth of what war actually meant. "Tell Derek I died protecting someone worth protecting," he'd said. Blood on his lips, shrapnel wounds that no medic could fix, dying in her arms. She'd promised him. But Ghost Vector operators weren't supposed to make contact with families. The program had been disbanded, the survivors given new identities with explicit orders. Stay invisible, stay silent. So she'd waited, carried those dog tags for 11 years, and 3 days ago fate had delivered, in the worst possible way. Her phone buzzed, text message from an unknown number. "This is Crawford. Need to meet. Your choice of location. It's important." She typed back. "Veterans Park, Phoenix, 2200 hours. Confirmed." Veterans Park at night was quiet, street lights casting pools of yellow illumination across empty pathways. Crawford sat on a bench near the memorial fountain, out of uniform, civilian clothes. Thea approached from an angle that let her scan the area first. Old habits. "You came alone?" she asked. "Like you requested. Can we talk?" She sat. "Maintain distance." "There's been chatter," Crawford said quietly. "Someone posted sketches of your marks on military forums. The posts were deleted quickly, but screenshots are circulating. People are asking questions." "I know," Thea said. "My handlers already contacted me." Crawford looked at her sharply. "Handlers? You're still active." "Inactive reserve, but they keep tabs. Make sure I stay invisible. Make sure problems get managed before they become disasters." "What kind of management?" "The kind where Mullins gets reassigned to Alaska before he can talk to anyone else. The kind where forum moderators receive official requests to delete content. The kind where this conversation gets monitored by people neither of us will ever meet." Crawford processed that. "So they're listening right now?" "Probably." He was quiet, then looked up at the darkness and spoke clearly. "For the record, this soldier did nothing wrong. She was assaulted by personnel under my command. Any security concerns stem from actions taken against her, not actions she initiated." Silence. Just the sound of water from the fountain. "They won't respond," Thea said, "but they heard, and it matters that you said it." Crawford nodded. "I wanted to tell you something else, about Corporal Hastings. Derek. You know him?" Thea pulled out the photograph from her pocket, pointed to Nathan. "His brother, Lieutenant Nathan Hastings, died in my arms March 15th, 2013. Yemen. Operation that officially never happened." Crawford stared at the photograph. "Jesus Christ. Does Derek know?" "Not yet. The operation is still classified. Talking to him means burning both of us. I've been waiting for the right time." "When's the right time to tell someone their brother died a hero?" "When they're ready to hear it without destroying themselves with questions they can't ask and answers I can't give." Crawford was quiet for a long moment. "There's something else you should know. Hastings has been researching Ghost Vector, digging into declassified documents. He's obsessed." "With what?" "With you, with whether you were there when his brother died. He found Nathan's bracelet among his effects, wears it constantly, and I think he's putting pieces together." Thea felt her chest tighten. "How close is he?" "Close enough to be dangerous, to himself and to you." She stood. "What are you going to do?" Crawford asked. "What I should have done years ago. Tell him the truth, before his obsession destroys him." 2 days later, Thea worked a contract job at a civilian construction site in Scottsdale, high-rise residential building, structural assessment. She was on the 15th floor checking beam connections when someone approached from behind. Bootsteps. Military gate. Derek Hastings stood 10 feet away, out of uniform, civilian clothes. "How'd you find me?" Thea asked. "I tracked your contractor registration," Hastings said. "Cross-referenced job sites with timing patterns. Found you on my third try." She turned back to her work. "You shouldn't be here." "I know about Nathan." Her hands froze, just for a second. "I found his deployment records," he continued, "heavily redacted. But dates match. Yemen, March 2013. Official cause of death listed as training accident. But that's bullshit. A lot of things happen that don't make official records," Thea said. "Were you there?" She didn't answer. "I saw your marks. Predator drone. Yemen operations use drone strikes." Thea set down her tools, turned to face him fully. "You want truth? Truth comes with consequences. Once you know, you can't unknow, and you can't talk about it. Ever. To anyone. The weight of that secret will follow you forever. Are you ready for that?" Hastings' jaw tightened. His hand went to the bracelet on his wrist. "I've been carrying the weight of not knowing for 11 years. At least knowing gives the weight meaning." Thea studied his face. Saw echoes of Nathan. Same eyes, same stubborn jaw, but different in fundamental ways. "Come with me," she said. They drove in silence, west out of Scottsdale into desert scrubland. 20 minutes of highway, then dirt roads that weren't on GPS maps. She pulled up to a storage facility, the kind that catered to people who didn't want questions asked. Unit 47. She unlocked it, rolled up the door. Inside looked like a military preparation area. Combat gear hung on racks, weapons cases secured with heavy locks, and on one wall photographs. 8 people in various combinations. Hastings stepped inside like entering a cathedral. "This is Ghost Vector," he whispered. "What's left of it," Thea replied. She walked to a footlocker, opened it, pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. Dog tags. Nathan's dog tags. The chain had been broken, repaired with paracord. She handed them to Hastings. His hands shook. "I cut these off his body," Thea said quietly. "He died, after I'd carried him 3 miles through hostile territory, after I'd promised him I'd get him home and tell you the truth." Hastings' eyes were wet. "What happened?" "We were 8 operators. Mission was to laser designate a high-value target for drone strike. Al-Qaeda leadership meeting outside Aden." She pulled out a map, showed him the location. "We were pinned down during exfil. Grenade landed near me. Nathan pushed me out of the way, took the blast himself. Marcus Reeves covered us while I tried to save Nathan. Got hit doing it. I lost them both within 30 minutes. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled. She pulled out another item, a letter. Handwritten, stained with old blood. "He wrote this during the insertion flight." Hastings took the letter with shaking hands. "Derek, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. But I need you to know something. I died protecting people worth protecting. The woman who gave you this letter saved 40 Marines, maybe more. I'd die for her again without hesitation. Not because I had to, because it was right. Tell Mom and Dad I loved them. Tell them I died doing something that mattered. Don't waste your life chasing my ghost. Build something instead. Be better than I ever was. Your brother Nathan." Hastings read it 3 times, tears streaming down his face. "Why didn't you contact me earlier?" "Because Ghost Vector operators who break silence disappear. Because your brother's mission is still classified. Because telling you meant risking both our lives. Then why tell me now? Because you were going to destroy yourself at trying to find answers. Because Nathan asked me to tell you when the time was right. And because 3 days ago I saw how much pain you're carrying." Hastings stared at the dog tags. "I was horrible to you. You were grieving. Grief makes us do things we wouldn't otherwise do." "What happened to the others, the other 6 people in those photos?" Thea's face hardened. "Marcus Reeves died 20 minutes after Nathan. 4 others were killed in subsequent operations. Only 2 of us survived, and we're not supposed to exist anymore." "Does Marcus have family?" "A brother, Colin Reeves, staff sergeant, currently serving at Alpha Range." Hastings' eyes went wide. "Reeves, my supervisor Reeves." "The same. Does he know?" "He knows his brother died in 2013. Knows it was classified, but official story was training accident. Same as Nathan." "Have you told him?" "I've tried, but Reeves doesn't want truth. He wants someone to blame." Hastings stood, paced the small storage unit. "The sabotage at Alpha Range, the loosened hydraulic fitting you found. Reeves had access. He's our supervisor." The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. Reeves hadn't been trying to kill soldiers. He'd been trying to frame Thea, to discredit her, to expose her. "Where is Reeves now?" Thea asked. "He had the day off. Said he had personal business in Phoenix." Thea pulled out her phone. No signal this far out. She ran for her truck. "What's wrong?" Hastings followed. "If Reeves is in Phoenix and he's been tracking me, he knows where I live. And if he's angry enough to sabotage equipment, he's angry enough to do worse." They drove fast, Thea's truck bouncing over dirt roads at dangerous speeds. Hastings braced himself. "Why would he want to hurt you?" "Because he thinks Ghost Vector abandoned his brother, left him to blame while we saved ourselves. It's not true, but it's what families tell themselves when official stories don't make sense." Her phone got signal as they hit the highway. Immediately it started buzzing. Text messages, voicemails. She played the most recent voicemail on speaker. A woman's voice. Professional. "This is Agent Voss, Department of Defense Security. We have a situation. Staff Sergeant Colin Reeves accessed classified database 2300 yesterday. Searched for Ghost Vector personnel records. Found fragments before security systems locked him out. He's been placed under surveillance. Current location is your apartment complex in Phoenix, armed. Federal agents are moving to intercept, but you need to get clear of the area immediately." The voicemail was 30 minutes old. Thea pushed the truck harder, 80 miles per hour on surface streets. "You can't confront him," Hastings said, "if federal agents are involved. Reeves is a soldier who lost his brother. He deserves to hear the truth from someone who was there. He's armed and dangerous. So am I." They reached her apartment complex 15 minutes later. Federal vehicles with dark windows parked at strategic locations. Agents in civilian clothes maintaining perimeter. But Thea noticed the gap in their coverage. A blind spot. Reeves was already inside her building. She parked 2 blocks away, grabbed something from under her seat. A compact pistol. "Stay here," she told Hastings. "Not a chance. Derek, this isn't your fight. That man is my supervisor, my responsibility. And if this goes wrong, you'll need a witness." She looked at him, saw Nathan's determination. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. And if shooting starts, hit the ground." They approached from the blind spot, Thea moving with practiced silence. Hastings tried to match her movements, but his boots were too loud. 3rd floor. Her apartment door was open, light spilling into the hallway. Thea moved to the doorframe, pistol held low and ready. Inside her apartment, Staff Sergeant Colin Reeves sat on her couch, service pistol on the coffee table. Not pointing at anyone, just present. He was 35, broader than his brother Marcus had been, hair graying at the temples, eyes hollow. "I was wondering when you'd get here," he said, his voice too calm. Thea entered slowly. "You broke into my apartment. You broke into my life when you got my brother killed. I didn't get Marcus killed. The enemy killed Marcus. You were there, you survived. He didn't. Sounds like someone made choices about who was worth saving." Thea lowered her pistol, set it on a table near the door, hands visible. "You want to know what happened to Marcus' real story, not the sanitized version. I know what happened. Ghost Vector operators went into Yemen for an illegal mission. Things went wrong. My brother got left behind." "That's not what happened." "Then tell me." Hastings stepped into the doorway. Reeves's eyes flicked to him. "Hastings, what are you doing here?" "Hearing the same story you need to hear, about my brother Nathan, about your brother Marcus, about what really happened in Yemen." Thea walked slowly to a bookshelf, pulled down a worn harmonica. This one had initials carved into it. M.R. She handed it to Reeves. "Marcus played this during downtime, said it reminded him of his father. Said someday he'd teach Sophie to play." Reeves stared at the harmonica like it was a holy relic. "How do you have this?" "Because Marcus asked me to keep it. Asked me to give it to Sophie when she was old enough to understand." "And how did he die?" Thea sat down across from him, looked him straight in the eyes. "Nathan spotted a grenade, pushed me out of the blast radius, took the shrapnel himself, fatal wounds. While I was working on Nathan, enemy fighters rushed our position. Marcus stood over both of us, provided covering fire, took 3 rounds, 1 severed his femoral artery." Her voice stayed steady, but her hands shook. "I held Nathan while he died. Then I held Marcus. He knew he wasn't going to make it. Know what his last words were?" Reeves shook his head. "Tell Sophie her daddy loved her. Tell her I died protecting my team. And tell Colin I'm sorry I won't be there to watch him make Sergeant Major." Reeves's face crumpled, years of grief collapsing into raw pain. "You could have contacted me." could have told me years ago. Ghost vector operators who break silence disappear. Not metaphorically, literally. The program required total secrecy. Any contact with families risked exposing operations that were still running. So my brother's death was worth it. Worth the lies. Your brother's death prevented 40 Marines from being overrun and killed. The intelligence we gathered stopped a major terrorist attack. Marcus knew the risks, volunteered anyway, died protecting people he'd never meet. She pulled out the photograph from Yemen, pointed to each face. Nathan Hastings, dead. Marcus Reeves, dead. Sarah Mitchell, dead. James Rodriguez, dead. Michael O'Brien, dead. Thomas Washington, dead. Only me and one other survived, and we live with their ghosts every single day. Reeves stared at his brother's face, young, smiling, alive. Why did you come to Alpha Range? Because this is what I know how to do. Fix things, keep equipment running, make sure soldiers don't die because of mechanical failures. I couldn't save your brother, but I can save others. Reeves picked up his pistol. Hastings tensed. Thea remained still, but Reeves just ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, set both on the table. I sabotaged that hydraulic fitting, wanted to make you look incompetent, get you investigated, force them to expose who you really were. I know. You could have reported me. You were grieving. Grief makes us do stupid things. I could have gotten soldiers killed, but you didn't. I found the sabotage before anyone got hurt, and now you know the truth. Federal agents entered. Agent Sarah Voss leading, 42 years old, Department of Defense Security. Staff Sergeant Reeves, you're under arrest for unauthorized access to classified materials, breaking and entering, and sabotage of military equipment. Reeves stood, hands out, ready for cuffs. Wait, Thea said. He's a soldier who lost his brother and received lies instead of truth. He deserves better than a court-martial. Voss looked at her. He committed federal crimes. So did I, every day for 11 years, living under a false identity, accessing classified facilities. If you're arresting him, arrest me too. You're authorized, he's not. Then authorize him, make him part of the solution. Voss considered. What are you suggesting? Reeves serves time, 6 months, dishonorable discharge. But then he works for you, helping veterans who lost family members in classified operations, giving them truth instead of lies. Hastings spoke up. I'll testify on his behalf, explain extenuating circumstances. Voss looked between them, a ghost vector survivor, a corporal who'd assaulted that survivor, and a staff sergeant who'd tried to destroy her, all asking for mercy. This is irregular. Everything about Ghost Vector was irregular. That's why it worked. Voss made a call, spoke quietly, then hung up. 6 months military prison, dishonorable discharge, then 2 years working veteran family liaison for classified casualties. He tells one word to anyone unauthorized, he disappears. Understood. Reeves nodded. They cuffed him gently, let him out. But before he left, he stopped in front of Thea. I'm sorry for everything. Your brother was my friend. He saved my life more than once. Taking care of you is the least I can do to honor his memory. After they'd gone, Thea and Hastings stood in her ransacked apartment. What happens now? Hastings asked. Now I file a report, get assigned a new apartment, start over. Or I stop running, stop hiding, except that Ghost Vector is over and I don't have to carry those secrets alone anymore. Which one are you choosing? Thea looked at the photograph still lying on her coffee table. 8 young faces, 6 dead, 2 surviving. I'm choosing to tell the truth, starting with a tribunal at Alpha Range, where I explained to your command exactly what Ghost Vector was, what we did, why it mattered, and why soldiers like Nathan and Marcus deserve to be remembered as heroes instead of training accident statistics. Hastings stared at her. That'll expose everything. Burn your cover completely. I know. You'll lose your anonymity, your protection. I know. Why would you do that? She picked up Nathan's dog tags, Marcus's harmonica. Because your brother asked me to tell you the truth, and I promised him I would, even if it cost me everything. A promise to a dying friend is worth more than my safety. She handed him the dog tags. These belong to you now. Take care of them. Remember him, and when you make Sergeant Major like he believed, you would remember why he died, so people like you could build instead of destroy. Hastings took the tags with shaking hands, put them on, the metal cold against his chest. What do I tell people when they ask about these Tell them your brother died a hero, saved lives, made choices that mattered, and left behind a legacy worth honoring. Outside, federal vehicles departed. The apartment complex returned to normal. But inside apartment 47, two people sat surrounded by evidence of a program that officially never existed, carrying forward the stories of soldiers who officially never died. And somewhere in Virginia, Agent Voss made another call. Ghost Vector survivor is requesting to testify. Open hearing, Alpha Range, full disclosure within security parameters. A long pause, then approved, scheduled a tribunal. It's time those soldiers got the recognition they earned, even if it's 11 years too late. The tribunal was scheduled for 0800 on a Thursday morning, 6 days after Reeves' arrest. Colonel James Whitmore convened the hearing in Conference Room C, the most secure space on base. Reinforced walls, signal jamming equipment. Present were 10 people, each chosen carefully. Colonel Whitmore, 48 years old, career infantry officer, a man who understood that sometimes the official story and the true story diverged. Agent Sarah Voss, Department of Defense Security. She'd brought a laptop containing files that existed in classification levels most people didn't know existed. Sergeant Major Vincent Crawford, the man who'd recognized Thea's scars. Master Sergeant Luther Kane, witness to Thea's competence. Corporal Derek Hastings, then out of uniform at Voss's request, a witness rather than a participant. His brother's dog tags visible under his shirt collar. 2 JAG officers, legal representation. And at the far end of the table, alone, Thea Brennan. She wore civilian contractor clothes. No attempt to look military, but her posture was military. Straight spine, hands folded, eyes forward. The door opened once more. Colin Reeves, in federal custody, wrists cuffed, 2 marshals flanking him. But Whitmore gestured and the marshals removed the cuffs. Staff Sergeant Reeves is here as a witness, not as a defendant. What happens in this room stays in this room. Understood. Everyone nodded. Whitmore opened a folder. This tribunal has been convened to address security incidents occurring at Alpha Range. Miss Brennan, you requested this hearing. The floor is yours. Thea stood. Thank you, Colonel. What I'm about to tell you is classified at levels that require special authorization. Agent Voss has secured that authorization. Everything said in this room is bound by national security restrictions. Unauthorized disclosure carries penalties up to and including federal imprisonment. She paused. My name is Thea Brennan. That's not the name I was born with. It's an identity created by Department of Defense in March 2013 after I was officially listed as killed in action. Whitmore leaned forward. You're claiming you're a deceased soldier. I'm claiming I'm a Ghost Vector operator, and Ghost Vector operators don't retire. We disappear. Voss opened her laptop, turned it so the screen faced the room, displayed a document with heavy redactions. Ghost Vector was a classified special operations program, run jointly by CIA and JSOC from 2011 to 2013. Primary mission was high-risk intelligence gathering and threat neutralization in denied territories. She clicked to another document, a roster, 23 names, 19 marked with red X symbols, 4 marked in yellow, 23 operators over the program's operational life, 19 killed in action, 4 survivors placed into witness protection protocols with new identities and strict non-contact orders. Kane spoke up. Why witness protection? War crimes committed by enemy forces, intelligence gathering on terrorist networks, operations that, if acknowledged, would have sparked international incidents or compromised ongoing intelligence collection. Crawford's jaw tightened. How many missions? 89 confirmed operations across 7 countries: Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, and 1 location I still can't name. 0 mission failures, but catastrophic personnel costs. Thea clicked to another screen. Mission summary reports. First year, 6 operators, 4 killed. Second year, 10 operators, 9 killed. Final year, 7 operators, 6 killed. The survival rate for Ghost Vector was 17%. Hastings' voice was rough. Why volunteer for those odds? Because the work mattered, because conventional forces couldn't operate in those areas, because intelligence we gathered prevented major attacks on American soil and American forces abroad, because someone had to do it and we were willing. She pulled up a photograph, the one from Yemen, 8 faces, young, determined. This was my team, March 2013, Yemen, our last operation together. She pointed to Nathan Hastings. Lieutenant Nathan Hastings, Marine Force Recon, 26 years old, communications specialist, killed in action protecting team members during exfiltration. Her finger moved to Marcus Reeves. Lieutenant Marcus Reeves, Marine Force Recon, 29 years old, heavy weapons specialist, killed in action providing covering fire for wounded teammates. She named each face, each life, each sacrifice. When she finished, silence filled the room. Whitmore broke it. What happened during that operation? We inserted at 0300 local time, 8 operators, standard infiltration protocols, got into position overlooking the target compound by 0500. She pulled up satellite imagery, showed the compound, the surrounding terrain. Targets arrived 0730. We confirmed positive identification, 14 high-value targets, including the operational planner for what would become the Benghazi attack. Voss interjected. That's still classified, but I can confirm. Intelligence gathered during this operation prevented a larger assault on American diplomatic facilities. The Benghazi attack that occurred 6 months later was the backup plan. Thea continued. We called in drone strike authorization at 0740. Predator launched 2 Hellfire missiles, direct hits, complete target elimination, mission success. Her voice got quieter. Exfiltration began at 0800. That's when we discovered the ambush. They'd anticipated our exit route. RPG hit our lead vehicle. We were pinned down. She zoomed in on the satellite image. Small arms fire from 3 positions. We returned fire, tried to maneuver to secondary extraction point. That's when someone threw a grenade from an upper window. Her hands were shaking now. Grenade landed 3 feet from my position. I was providing suppressive fire. Didn't see it. Nathan did. He pushed me, hard, put his body between me and the blast. Shrapnel hit him in the back and side. Catastrophic wounds. Hastings made a sound, half sob, half gasp. His hand went to the dog tags under his shirt. I tried to stop the bleeding, but there was too much damage. While I was working on Nathan's enemy fighters rushed our position, Marcus stood over us, provided covering fire, took 3 rounds. One severed his femoral artery. Reeves closed his eyes, tears streaming. I held Nathan while he died. He was conscious for about 6 minutes. Know what he said? She looked directly at Hastings. He said, tell Derek I died protecting someone worth protecting. Tell him to build things instead of chasing ghosts. Tell him I love him and I'm proud of him even though he doesn't know it yet. Hastings broke. Full body sobs. Then I held Marcus. He lasted 20 minutes. He knew he wasn't going to make it. She turned to Reeves. Marcus said, tell Colin I'm sorry I won't be there to watch him make Sergeant Major. Tell Sophie her daddy loved her and died protecting his team. And tell them both I'd do it again because this is what Marines do. Reeves put his face in his hands. I called for emergency extraction while coordinating drone strikes on enemy positions. Kept fighting while 2 of my teammates bled out. When the helicopter arrived, I loaded both bodies, refused to leave them behind. She pulled up after-action photos, redacted heavily, but showing a blood-soaked helicopter interior. Body bags, and Thea herself, covered in blood, holding a rifle, eyes hollow. I carried them 3 miles through hostile territory, under fire, while coordinating air support, and when I got them to the landing zone, I cut their dog tags off, took their personal effects, and promised I'd tell their families the truth. Voss spoke quietly. The official after-action report listed this operation as a training accident. Both Marines killed in a vehicle rollover. Standard protocol for ghost vector casualties. Why lie? Kane asked. Because the operation was illegal under international law. Drone strike on Yemeni soil without host nation approval. If we'd acknowledged it, Yemen would have expelled American advisors. Al-Qaeda would have known their leadership structure was compromised. So you sacrificed their recognition for operational security. We sacrificed everything for operational security. That was the deal. Do the mission, die if necessary, and disappear from history so the mission succeeds. Whitmore leaned back. What happened after Yemen? I completed 2 more operations, solo. Then Ghost Vector was officially disbanded. The 4 survivors were listed as killed in action, given new identities, placed under strict non-contact orders, and told to disappear. Why Peboe? Because we'd seen too much, done too much, knew too much. We were security risks, and we had enemies, terrorist organizations, foreign intelligence services, criminal networks, all looking for Ghost Vector operators. She pulled up a threat assessment document. names, and organizations. $3 million for information leading to the capture of any ghost vector operator. $5 million for live capture. That bounty is still active, which is why my identity has been protected for 11 years. Voss added, 2 ghost vector survivors have been killed since the program ended. One in a car accident that wasn't an accident, one in a home invasion that was too professional to be random. The remaining 2 survivors, including Miss Brennan, have been under protective protocols ever since. Crawford spoke for the first time. I signed one of your after-action reports. Afghanistan, 2012, asset extraction under heavy fire. You were signing off on my operation. Ghost Vector used cover identities within other special operations units. We embedded with them, used their credentials, then disappeared. The report said 3 operators extracted a high-value intelligence asset, 2 operators wounded. All survived. I was one of the wounded operators. Took a round through the knee, shattered my patella. That's why I wear a brace now. Permanent damage from an operation that officially never happened. Kane suddenly understood. That's why you're so good at equipment maintenance. You maintain gear in combat, where failure meant death. Exactly. Ghost Vector operators were cross-trained. Combat, intelligence, engineering, medical. We had to be able to do everything because we operated in small teams with no support. If equipment failed, we fixed it ourselves, under fire, in the dark, with improvised tools. She pulled up training records. I'm certified in combat engineering, electrical systems, mechanical repair, structural assessment, explosive ordnance disposal, and emergency medicine. I learned those skills because my life depended on them. Whitmore looked at the sabotage report. The hydraulic fitting you found at Alpha Range. You said it had been loosened deliberately. Correct. How long would it have taken someone with your training to identify that? 4 minutes, which is how long it took me. And how long would it have taken someone without your training? They wouldn't have found it. Standard diagnostic procedures wouldn't catch that kind of subtle sabotage. It would have failed during live fire. Catastrophic mechanical breakdown. 6 to 12 casualties. Kane confirmed. She's right. We'd been running diagnostics for weeks. Never caught it. She found it in minutes. Who sabotaged the equipment? Whitmore asked. Thea looked at Reeves. Staff Sergeant Colin Reeves, who was acting on incomplete information and justified anger at a system that lied to him about his brother's death. Whitmore turned to Reeves. Is this true? Reeves nodded. I loosened the hydraulic fitting. I wanted to make her look incompetent, get her investigated, force the system to expose who she really was. I didn't think about the consequences. I just wanted answers. And now you have answers. Was it worth it? Reeves looked at Thea. My brother died a hero, saved lives, made choices that mattered. Yes, it was worth it, even if it cost me everything. Whitmore made notes. What do you want from this tribunal? 3 things. First, I want Nathan Hastings and Marcus Reeves recognized for their sacrifice. Not publicly, but in classified records, so their families know they died as heroes. Voss nodded. That can be arranged. Classified commendations. Sealed records that families can access with proper clearance. Second, I want the sabotage incident closed with appropriate consequences for Reeves. 6 months served. Then working veteran family liaison. Helping other families who lost soldiers in classified operations. Whitmore looked at Reeves. You accept those terms? Yes, sir. Third, I want to stop hiding. I want to work openly as a veteran, under my real identity, without the constant fear that exposure means death. Must Voss inhale sharply. That's not possible. The security risks are too high. Then manage the risks. Put protective details in place. Relocate me if necessary. But let me stop pretending I'm someone I'm not. The bounties are still active. Then let them look. I've been hiding for 11 years. I'm done running. Whitmore intervened. Agent Voss, is there any way to accommodate this request? Voss was silent. Then she made a call, spoke quietly, listened. Finally, she hung up. Provisional approval, subject to security review and implementation of protective protocols. You'll be relocated, given a new assignment at a secure facility, protective detail assigned, and your real identity restored in classified systems. What about civilian life? Can I work outside secure facilities? Limited, with prior approval and security screening. But yes, within parameters. Thea nodded. I accept those terms. Whitmore made final notes. This tribunal finds the following. 1. The treatment of contractor Thea Brennan by Corporal Derek Hastings and others was inappropriate and violated military standards. Corrective action has been taken. 2. The sabotage of equipment by Staff Sergeant Colin Reeves endangered personnel and violated military law. Appropriate punishment has been determined. 3. The service of Ghost Vector operators, including Nathan Hastings and Marcus Reeves, is hereby recognized in classified records with appropriate commendations for valor and sacrifice. 4. Contractor Thea Brennan, also known by her classified identity, is authorized to receive identity restoration and protective protocols as determined by Department of Defense Security. He closed his folder. This tribunal is concluded. All proceedings are classified. Unauthorized disclosure will be prosecuted. Dismissed. People stood slowly, processing what they'd heard. Hastings approached Thea. Thank you for telling me the truth about Nathan, for carrying his story all these years. He was my friend. Carrying his story was an honor. Reeves stepped forward, Marshall staying back. I'm sorry for everything, for doubting you, for the sabotage. You were protecting your brother's memory. I understand that, and Marcus would be proud of the work you're going to do. Will you visit Sophie, tell her about her father? When she's old enough to understand, when security protocols allow, I'll tell her everything. The kind of man Marcus was, how much he loved her, how he died making sure she'd grow up safe. The marshals led Reeves away. Kane approached next. Ma'am, it's been an honor working with you. Your standards made us all better. The work isn't done, Master Sergeant. Keep those standards high. Crawford was last. I should have recognized what you were sooner. You protected me when it mattered. That clipboard drop got their attention, started everything that led to this moment. Whitmore stopped her as she prepared to leave. Miss Brennan, the military owes you a debt we can never fully repay. But I want you to know, you're welcome at Alpha Range anytime. And if you ever need anything, you call me directly. He handed her a card with his personal number. Thank you, Colonel. That means more than you know. She walked out of Conference Room C, into Arizona's sunlight, free for the first time in 11 years from the weight of secrecy. 3 months later, Alpha Range held a memorial dedication ceremony. Not public, not publicized, just personnel who'd been cleared for classified access. A small group, maybe 50 people. A new section had been added to the base memorial wall, polished black granite, 23 names engraved in precise letters. At the top, simple text, to those who served in silence. No mention of Ghost Vector, no details about operations, just names and dates and recognition that these people had existed, had served, had sacrificed. Nathan Hastings' name was there, 4th from the top. Marcus Reeves' name was there, 7th from the toe. And at the bottom, SGM Thea Brennan, her real rank, her real name, listed among the fallen even though she still walked among the living. Hastings stood in front of his brother's name, wearing dress uniform now, 3 stripes. He'd finally made sergeant. He placed Nathan's dog tags at the base of the memorial, along with a photograph. Nathan smiling, young, alive. I made sergeant brother, just like you said I would, and I'm going to make sergeant major, for both of us. Build something instead of destroying, just like you asked. Reeves stood nearby, civilian clothes, no longer military, but his posture still spoke of service. He placed Marcus's harmonica at the memorial base, along with a drawing, crude, done by a child's hand, a stick figure, father holding a stick figure daughter. Sophie drew this. She's 11 now, smart, brave. And Thea's going to meet her next month. Tell her about the hero her daddy was. He looked at Thea. She nodded. A promise kept. Others came forward, placing items at the memorial. Letters, photos, medals, remembrances of people who'd served in silence and died in shadows. Thea stood apart, watching, no longer hiding, her real identity restored. Protective detail watching from discreet distances. A new life beginning. Agent Voss approached. Your new assignment starts next week. Secure facility in Colorado. Equipment maintenance and training for special operations units. Will I be able to leave to have a life outside the work? Within limits, with approval, with protection. But yes, you'll have more freedom than you've had in 11 years. Crawford joined them. I put in a request to have you consult on equipment standards across all JSOC facilities. Share your expertise, train the next generation, if you're interested. I'm interested. This work matters, and I'm good at it. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence. 50 people standing at attention, honoring 23 names, 23 lives, 23 sacrifices that had changed history in ways most people would never know. When it ended, people dispersed slowly, but Thea lingered, standing in front of her own name on the memorial wall. Strange to see yourself listed among the dead, to know that officially you'd ceased to exist, but that the work continued. A young soldier approached, female, early 20s, nervous but determined. "Ma'am, I heard about what you did, about Ghost Vector. What's your name?" "Private Emma Caldwell. I just got assigned to Alpha Range, maintenance specialist." "Good field to be in, important work. I wanted to ask, how do you do it? How do you carry that weight, all those losses?" Thea looked at the memorial wall, at the names, at the lives reduced to letters carved in stone. "You carry it by remembering it matters, by doing the work right every single time, by understanding that excellence isn't optional when lives depend on you, and by building something worth the sacrifice they made." She turned to face Caldwell directly. "Those people died so others could live, so Americans could sleep safely, so threats could be stopped before they materialized. The best way to honor them is to live the kind of life they died protecting, to build instead of destroy, to matter." Caldwell nodded. "I'll remember that." "Don't just remember, do. Because someday you might be the one making repairs at 3 a.m. that keep soldiers alive. You might be the one who spots a problem nobody else saw. When that moment comes, you need to be ready." "Yes, ma'am." Caldwell saluted. Thea returned it as evening settled over Alpha Range. Thea walked the perimeter one last time, past the firing ranges, past the maintenance bays, past the barracks where young people slept. She'd spent 11 years invisible, working in shadows, carrying secrets that weighed more than any physical burden, honoring promises to the dead while living a life that wasn't her own. Now that weight was shared, the secrets were told, the promises were kept. Her phone buzzed. Message from an unknown number. "This is your new handler, reporting location and timeline for Colorado assignment. Also, there's someone here who wants to meet you, another Ghost Vector survivor, the only other one still alive. Thought you two should finally meet." Thea stared at the message. 11 years alone. 11 years thinking she was the only one left. And now the possibility of someone who understood. She typed back, "I'll be there." Started walking toward her truck, toward Colorado, toward a future she'd stopped believing was possible. Behind her, Alpha Range continued its eternal rhythms. Soldiers training, equipment running, the machinery of defense never stopping. And on the memorial wall, 23 names stood silent witness to sacrifice, to service, to the price some people paid so others didn't have to. She drove west into the setting sun, Arizona desert endless in every direction. The scars would always remain, permanent marks of temporary moments that changed everything. But scars were proof, proof of survival, proof that something tried to kill you and failed. And in that survival lay victory, ahead. Lights began appearing, towns, cities, lives being lived in safety, purchased through sacrifice most people would never know about. That was enough. That had to be enough. That would always be enough. The work mattered, the people mattered, the mission mattered. And Thea Brennan, Ghost Vector survivor, keeper of secrets, carrier of stories, drove into the gathering darkness with purpose in her heart, and promises kept weighing lighter than they had in 11 long years. The ghosts were finally at rest, and the living could finally live. Not forgetting, never forgetting, but moving forward, building, creating, honoring through action rather than mourning. That was the victory. That was the point. That was what they died for. And she would make sure, every single day for the rest of her life, that their sacrifice was worth it, that the work continued, that the mission succeeded. Because that's what heroes did. The real ones, the quiet ones, the ones who never asked for recognition and never expected gratitude. They just did the work and kept their promises and built something worth the price that had been paid. Always.